Just as the painter Turner was dying, he said, "The sun is God." And certainly there are many cultures and civilizations that have believed just that. There was a whole school of thought actually in the 18th century. And early Christianity reflected a lot of solar worship. Some of the symbols are still there today. This video is about the sun, its meaning to us spiritually, mythologically, astrologically. But first, let's just imagine what happens if the sun stops. Just stops shining. To imagine this, I guess the best thing to do is picture yourself in Antarctica, where they get very little sun. Nothing's growing, it's frozen cold, it's highly inhospitable. We wouldn't last more than a couple of minutes. Well, not without the proper protection anyway. So we have to understand that the sun is absolutely vital to life, because in seconds or minutes we wouldn't exist if it just stopped. If you speak to a farmer, he would tell you how important the sun is, because when he plants his crops, those seeds that fall near the fence, near the hedge at the side of the field, they don't grow as tall as the ones in the middle. So even just a small amount of shade from the sun means that that plant doesn't grow as much as the ones that are getting full sun. Just kind of think about those things for a while. That's how important it is, the sun, the fact that it makes things grow stronger. And if you go back millennia, when you depended on the crop that year, when you couldn't just kind of go down to the supermarket and get your flour in the middle of winter from there, if you didn't grow it, you would have to grow your own corn or wheat or grain, and if it failed, then you and your family would starve. So the sun was an incredibly important thing. They lived by its heartbeat, by its pulse, by the seasons. So religion and farming and astrology all really were kind of one thing in the olden days. They used astrology and religion and the sun in pretty much the same way, because it was all paying homage or with great respect to the sun. And the sun and the planets were living gods or beings. Although they were in another realm, they were stronger, more magnificent, and they could in some way influence or magically support from their realm the things that happened here on Earth. You wouldn't live long, you could imagine, if you didn't have food, and so you prayed to that god or that deity, that divinity, which was all kind of wrapped up with the sun and the planets, the movement in the heavens. So it's incredibly important. It's also a very important thing for timing and planning, because the sun has a regular season and a regular set and a regular rise. Then it was also important for planning long-term things, like when do I plant my seeds? And so festivals and homage, religious festivals, spiritual festivals were arranged around the pattern of the sun and its seasons. It's just the centre of everything, to be honest with you. Egyptian leaders, well, they probably led the world in terms of sun worship. The Egyptian pharaohs, they kind of specialised in it. They became a solar state, a state that worshipped the sun and was led by the sun's movements. There was more than a single god at times in Egypt, but for a time there was the one god, the sun god. There are different aspects to that god, that sun as well. The sun that rose in the morning could be one god, Khepri, and then at mid-heaven there was another sun god, a different aspect of the same god, but a different aspect, so he had a different name. And then in the evening he would have a different name again. There is something we should look at. Have a look at this. This is a stele, or a carved stone tablet from Egypt. It actually shows the pharaoh Akhenaten and his family. The scene is dominated by the sun here at the top in the centre, and you can see that there are rays coming down from it towards the family, as if to bless them or in some way nurture them. There are little hands on the ends of the rays, and on either side the little hands sometimes hold an ankh, the giver of life. It's clear in this scene that the sun is considered to be the bestower of life and energy and everything to this family. But it was a pharaoh who was considered himself a god. So this stele talks a lot, it says a lot about how the sun was viewed in this period. The stele points out that the sun's rays were important, very important. In actual fact, science now appreciates just how very important the sun's rays are. Just a few years ago, we launched into space around the planet. We launched something called the Solar Observatory. And what that has been able to do is pay attention, map, record a lot of the things that happens on the sun, which we knew nothing about before the SDO was there, the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Sorry, I couldn't remember the name. And so scientists now accept many things that they wouldn't have accepted about the sun if we just went back 15 years. They wouldn't have accepted how powerful it is and how its invisible energies have such a huge influence. We now know that this planet that we live on, Earth, actually lives in the sun's back garden. Everything that the sun does affects us, everything. I mean, we are just so closely linked to it. There are huge energy streams, if you like, to put it simply, that connect with the Earth the whole time. And we're kind of pumping with energy which comes from the sun. The sun actually has more than one layer. It has the photosphere, or the bit that you can look at, the smooth yellow surface that we can see at sunrise and sunset. But if you photograph it in different mediums of light, in infrared or ultraviolet, different wavelengths of light, then you will see a different surface. There is a chromosphere, which is the very fiery one that we see, which can only be photographed using special cameras. We can't see it with our naked eye. And science also understands now that solar wind, which is simply a constant movement of energy which is flowing out of the sun, we call it solar wind. It's not really a wind, it's just a constant flow of energy. We know that actually solar wind has many different geysers. The solar wind coming from the chromosphere has a different speed and a different quality to the solar wind coming from the photosphere. So different layers of the sun are kicking out different types of energy, all of which are arriving here on Earth. And there are lots of invisible or dark energies. So these are the ones that don't interact with our dimension. They are massless, they are weightless. And so something called neutrinos, tiny weeny little particles that are so small we couldn't even imagine. These are flowing through us and through the Earth the whole time. As I've been talking to you during this video, millions and millions of neutrinos have just flowed right through your body. So all of these energies and things that are coming from the sun, they must be feeding us in some way. The invisible side of us, the dark side of us, our spirit, if you like, our soul, is probably being fed by all of the energies that are being kicked out of the sun, which science is now discovering and finally admits is there. And I think actually, if you think back to the stele with Akhenaten there, probably the Egyptians were the first people to realise this. We have scientists now who admit it, but if you remember how those rays were coming out, then that's pretty close to what science would actually admit is happening these days. So that's quite an amazing. I love the way that something so old then just resonates with something so newly understood about the sun. I think that's great. Okay, so the solar system. Let's just look at the solar system. So there's the sun at the centre, and then there is an arrangement of planets going out from the sun. A solar system is a system around a sun. So our solar system has our sun at the centre, and then we have the planet Mercury, which is how we communicate and talk. Then we have the planet Venus, which is what we desire, our tastes, our self-worth, if you like. And then we have the Earth with the moon, which describes our unconscious, our feminine side, our emotions. Then we have Mars, which describes our aggression, our drives, our energy. And then we have Jupiter, which describes how we cope with expansion, Saturn, how we cope with restriction, and so on. And actually the solar system is made up like a human being. It's a human, but just looks different, if you like. So when I look at the astrology chart of a human being, I'm looking at a map of the planets at the moment they were born. And it's like that map describes what the solar system as an entity was like at that time, and that human being then is a reflection of that. So if we think about the solar system with the sun at the centre and the planets around the outside, then we can think also of a human being who has a metaphorical sun, a spirit, at his centre, and then arranged around that are the forces or the archetypal energies, the motivations that the planets describe that we all have as human beings. So we all have a way to communicate, we all have an ability to communicate, we all have aggression or a temper, we all have desire, and the planets around the sun represent all these things. So in astrology, what we're saying when I look at the sun, what I'm seeing is the fact that it's in the centre, in the solar system, says to me that in astrology, the sun is at the centre of everything. So what does the sun mean in astrology? What meaning does it have? Well, it's because of its unique position. Then obviously what we have to understand about is it does indeed represent the centre of us, the spiritual centre of us. It represents the will, the masculine or yang side of us. It represents our will to live. It represents our energy to go out there, to exist. It represents something of our destiny and our purpose. It's the leader in us. It's the kind of willful decision maker, if you like. It's an energy which decides where your life is going in an amazing way, really, because what it will do is it will say, let's say that your sun is strong, the energy, your yang masculine energy is strong, and you're in the driving seat, and you've got the reins or the steering wheel in your hand. Then what you're doing is you're kind of master of your own life. You know where you're going. You've got some will. You've got some destiny, and you've got purpose. So you have a sun that is operating strongly, that is giving you that full-on sunshine energy to feel confident, to feel that you deserve to be here, to give you the will to get up in the morning, the desire to look forward, and the energy, the enthusiasm. All this comes from the sun. Let's say that your sun is not strong for some reason when you were born. The astrology shows that your sun is weak, or it's in a position of non-strength, shall we say. Then you haven't got the reins in your hand. You're not in the driving seat. And in that case, you will feel as if life is taking you and leading you. You will feel as if you don't have control of your own life. You'll feel as if you don't have the ability to decide things for yourself, that your will isn't strong, that you don't deserve to have anything, that you aren't a divine being who deserves to have what she wants. And the sun gives us that. It's our spark of divinity. When we die, the sun is the thing that leaves us. It's that spark of life that is there one moment when we're alive, and it's gone when we die. It's our consciousness, if you like, that sacred something that just isn't there anymore. The body might be there, but the spirit has gone. So what does astrology say about its abilities to support us in other ways? Well, the sun in our charts is the healer of family curses, because we will have the strength and the independence to root out the skeletons in the family cupboard and to take on the inherited issues that remain in the family, and we will be able to get over them, to learn a way of conquering them, if you like. And so we will rise victorious despite what the ancestors suffered. The sun is also a healer in astrology. It was well known that the sun would give healing. And you will find actually the healing sanctuaries and temples in Greece, for instance, the Asclepian on Kos. When the patients got there to be healed, the first thing that had to happen was they had to sleep on the ground, but then the sun was used as part of their treatment. The sun was understood to help certain conditions. And in actual fact, medical science has found out that the sun is responsible for, largely responsible for how multiple sclerosis affects people. The further north people get in latitude around the Earth, the more likely they are to struggle with multiple sclerosis. So the closer to the equator you get, the less likely. So even scientific things like that can show the power of the sun and its control over diseases. There we go. I hope that was in some way informative. I have a master's degree in cultural astronomy and astrology, and my dissertation was actually on the sun, the Egyptian sun, and how its influences went through into Christian iconography and Christian imagery of the 14th to 16th century. And if you look around just the Vatican, for instance, the basilica there, then you will see so many images and symbols of the sun. It's very clear that monotheistic religions gained all of their imagery from the sun of ancient times. My name is Alison Chester-Lambert. I hope you enjoyed listening to that, and it was great to have you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and good luck with your sun. Bye.